I'm Emily Gunn. I'm from the American Society of Clinical Oncology, and I'm presenting on behalf of my co-authors, Kelly Brooks and Stephanie Valadow. We have no disclosures and there is no funding, and I should say that everything I say in this presentation is my own opinion and should not be construed as the opinion of my employer. Check that box. Okay. So it's a familiar problem that I'm sure a lot of us have heard before, and it's no different with the ASCO journals. The editors at this journal that we did our experiment in, JCO Oncology Practice, they struggle to find reviewers. And somehow every time I talk to a journal editor-in-chief, they seem to think that they're the only editor who has trouble finding reviewers. They seem to think they are the only one and that there's this world of reviewers out there, and if only they could find them. And so that was the discussion that came up on an editor conference call not too long ago. And they started asking themselves, what would make people more likely to agree when we invited them to review? Should we send them more reminders? Probably not, because everybody's email inbox is already flooded, so we didn't like that idea. Should we give them longer to respond to the review invitation? We already give them a week, so we agreed that a week is long enough for them to say yes or no. And then the idea came out, what if we gave them more time to review? As the journals director, I said, there's no way we're going to do that. You cannot give them more time to review than you already do. We have to make our review time shorter. But they insisted. And so like a lot of biomedical journals, we typically give reviewers 2 weeks to review. And we decided that we would give them now 3 weeks to review instead of 2. And because I was so dead set against it, the editor and I made a deal that we would do it for 3 months and see what happened and then reevaluate. So that's what we did. So the editor's hypothesis was this, that if we offered a 21-day deadline for the review time instead of 14 days, that this would increase the reviewer conversion rate and reduce the number of reviewers that we needed to invite before getting 2 reviewers to agree. So his thought process was make the review a little more attractive to them and we won't have to invite as many people. But then, of course, in my mind, the question was, what is this going to do on the timeliness of the submitted reviews? And will this make our overall time to decision that much slower? So this is what we did. Between July 1st and September 30th of 2024, we sent 593 reviewer invitations for 95 manuscripts, all at the same journal. And we mentioned the 3-week deadline many times. There's no way the reviewers could have missed it. And if they did miss it, it wasn't on us. So we mentioned it in the initial invitation email. We mentioned it in the confirmation email after they agreed to review. And then we send them email reminders that, your review deadline is coming up 1 week before the deadline and 2 days prior to the deadline. So we gave them ample notice that they have 3 weeks. And here are the results. The number of reviewers we had to invite per manuscript actually increased by 0.5 reviewers. So not a huge increase, but an increase nonetheless. I didn't say I told you so to the editor, but I wanted to. The response time, in other words, the time that it took reviewers to respond to the invitation to review, also increased just a little bit by 0.1 days. The percentage of late reviewers decreased, so not a big surprise there. We gave them more time and fewer people were late. It's understandable. But this is the one that I thought was the most interesting, the lateness, and I know that's not a real word, but I couldn't come up with a better one. The lateness of late reviewers actually increased. So by 2.5 days, which if you're asking me is a pretty significant increase in time. So under the 14-day deadline, if reviewers were late, they were typically late by, let's see, where did it go? Change. They were, the numbers are there. My brain just froze. But the point is, the late reviewers were even later than they were under the 14-day deadline. So what did we learn? Reminder that the hypothesis was that if we offered a 21-day deadline for reviewers, that this would increase our reviewer conversion rate, thus reducing the number of reviewers that we had to invite before getting 2 reviewers to agree. That did not happen. We offered the 3-week deadline, and we actually had to invite more reviewers before we got 2 people to agree. But then also, I personally wanted to know what effect is this going to have on the timeliness of the submitted review, and late reviews, it turned out, were submitted even later than the reviews with a shorter deadline. So here's what we concluded from this, that the 2-week timeline is not likely a factor that makes reviewers more likely to accept a review invitation. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that would go into a reviewer saying yes or no to reviewing a paper. And it's kind of hard to tell what exactly the factors were that were at play, but it does not appear to us that if you offer reviewers more time, that they will be more likely to agree to review. And it also appears that reviewers will take the time allotted to them. No matter how much time you give them, they're going to use all of the time that you give them. And they will typically submit within 1 to 2 days of the deadline, regardless of the total time given. So under the 14-day deadline, the average number of days to submit was 13 days. And under the 21-day deadline, people typically took 21 days. So the lesson is figure out when you actually want the work done, and they'll do it the day before it's due. So there's obviously a lot of questions that we were not able to answer with this study, and that we would like to continue to investigate. What would happen if we actually shortened the review deadline? If we gave them 7 days instead, would they submit on day 6? Probably. But what percentage would submit on day 6? So that's something we'd like to learn. If a longer deadline to submit doesn't appear to motivate reviewers to accept the invitation, what would? I think that's probably the eternal question. And if we could figure it out, we would do it. And we also wondered, would a reminder that comes directly from the editor-in-chief make a difference? And this is something that the editor-in-chief wanted to try in this case. Typically, the reminders that go to reviewers when their review is coming due, they come from the editorial staff or from the submission system. And so he thought, I wonder if it comes from my email address or has my name on it as the editor-in-chief, will that motivate people to submit their review in a more timely manner? So we shall see. We had some limitations, of course, of our study. We did not get a true comparison in the sense that it would have been better probably to compare 2 groups of papers that were sent out during the same time period. Instead, we were comparing those 3 months to the same time period, 12 months prior. And we did not actually solicit feedback from reviewers to see if the extended deadline factored into their decision to accept the review invitation. So the conclusions that we're coming to here are conjecture, because we didn't specifically ask the reviewers how they felt about that 3-week deadline. And that is all. Happy to answer questions.
Right here in the first mic.
Hi, I'm Nihar Shah from Carnegie Mellon University. So I'm an editor-in-chief for Transaction on Machine Learning Research, which is one of the main machine learning journals. And like you said, what might work? One thing that we do is at the beginning of the year, we populate a set of reviewers. So we invite a bunch of reviewers and say, hey, you should accept or reject now the invitation. And if you accept it, then you're a part of this pool, and you'll be assigned up to 12 papers through the year, and at most 1 at a time. And you cannot decline it unless there's a special circumstance, like you're on leave or something.
That's interesting.
And I mean, we don't have a study on this, but just anecdotally, like we've been very happy with this. So maybe something to consider in your next study.
That is interesting. So are you finding that people generally don't decline?
That's correct.
Interesting.
Yes.
Might have to try that. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm going to take the back mic.
I'm Alex from the University of Sydney. I appreciate you showing these results, and I was wondering about addressing that limitation you mentioned of it comparing different time periods. But
This one?
can you actually tell us, are you having an increase anyway each year in how long it takes, or sorry, number of reviewers that have to be asked before you get a reviewer to sign up? Because that's a critical number, right, to compare to your finding that during these people who got the longer deadline,
Good question. So we compared it to the same time period, the 12 months before, but we didn't go back any farther than that.
and it is going up in my experience.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably would be if we did check. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Front mic here.
Matthew Stanbrook, CMAJ. Accepting a review a manuscript is a highly normative process, right? Most of the time we don't pay reviewers, we can afford to. So reviewers are doing it for free out of a sense of professional obligation and duty. Do you think your findings reflect that the intervention is a violation of the expected norm? Like in clinical medicine, we expect to have 2 weeks to
2
review
weeks.
and oh God, you've changed the norm.
Right.
What's up with that? And on that basis, I predict, although I'd love to see the data, that if you gave 1 week, it would not work either.
That's interesting. I did sort of wonder that same question, in biomedical research, generally 2 weeks is what you give, right? And so to give 3 weeks to me implies either that this is something weird and different, and I don't know if I really want to be a part of it, or it implies that maybe this review isn't so urgent. If you're giving me more time, then, I'll get to it when I get to it. Instead of that 2 weeks when you kind of know what to expect. So good question. Thank you.
Great. Back here.
Paul Cooper from the Electrochemical Society. Emily, I want to thank you for sharing this. I'm the editorial manager, so unlike your editors, yes, I know full well every one of them is looking for reviewers. We've been down this road. We've done all of this. Your results are way better than ours.
Oh,
We went from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. The number of reviews we had to request went up. The number of declines went up. The failure to come through went up. I think what you just said may be the point. By giving them more time, we told them, well, we don't really necessarily want this review.
right.
And they say yes, and then they forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
Exactly.
thank you. This makes me feel better. This is my whole life.
I'm very glad to hear that. Yes, the number of declines that we received actually did go up as well. So from the number of invitations that we sent out, the percentage of the responses that were a decline rose by about 5%.
Fantastic.
Claire Ardern from UBC. There's 2 online questions. First from Claire at UBC. Thanks for the presentation. You ran the intervention over the Northern Hemisphere summer. Our experience, or her experience as an editor, is that it's more challenging to find summer reviewers.
Yes.
Can you comment?
Yeah, and that was something I should have listed under the limitations, and it goes along with not asking feedback from the reviewers as to why they said yes or no, because it is harder to find reviewers during Northern Hemisphere summer, just due to vacations and kind of a normal slowdown. And also at ASCO, we have our annual meeting in June, so right at the beginning of the summer, and so there tends to be sort of a lag in ASCO activity in general through July. So that might have also contributed.
Thanks. And I'm going to just follow up. Colin Grabarick from ACC asks if you know how time from submission to decision compared for papers whose reviewers were given 2 versus 3 weeks.
Yeah, so the time to decision, my worst nightmares did not come true. It did not increase a lot. It did increase slightly. I think part of that is because when we did move to 3 weeks, we gave the editors a lot more reminders, and we're really, really pushing them. If you're going to give reviewers more time to review, then you have to make your decisions very, very quickly. You need to assign reviewers really fast. You need to make a decision really fast once those reviews come in. And I mean, it was probably to the point of us being a little obnoxious, but we really, really hammered that into the editors.
Thanks so much.
Up here.
Tim Feeney, BMJ. Have you considered keeping your current deadline of 2 weeks and just telling them they have 1 week to do it?
I love that. So we do, for all of our journals, we do offer an expedited review process for some journals, and we ask for their review in 72 hours. And we find that we always get it in 72 hours. So to your point, yeah, maybe we should do that.
I feel like myself, when I get a review, I say yes, but I don't keep track of the date. I wait until I get you're 1 day late and like, okay, I'll do the review now.
It sounds,
So, I mean, I don't think the week would actually matter because people aren't keeping track.
it sounds like you're in good company.
Great. In the back?
Hi, David Strutz from American Nuclear Society, and my question is there a journal policy to invite the number of needed reviewers all at once, or could you exceed that? For instance, some of our editors, and we let it up to the editors to decide, will actually invite 5 or 6 reviewers, hoping to get the 2 to agree, and then sometimes you get an extra review or 2.
Right. So we try to discourage the editors from doing that, in part because we don't want to send reviewers any more emails than we have to. And if we really only need those 2 reviews, if we've invited 4 reviewers and 2 reviews come in, are we going to wait for the other 2 reviews and have the potential for it to drag on? Are we going to tell the reviewers, oh, guess we don't need your review anyway, because we feel like that's not really good for reviewer relations. So I know some editors do that, but we encourage them not to.
That's the double-edged sword that we also
Right.
encountered. Yep, thank you.
To your time of year problem, can I suggest randomization for future experimentation with your editorial process as a solution?
Thank you.
Potentially?
Yeah, yeah. We'll
Thanks.
take that into account for sure.